This is a copy of the registration of live birth. We talked about it. It's a copy, a version of this in the introduction to Trust, Estates, and Securities, the very first video here on YouTube. This is the document the mom and the dad fill out. Up here, at the top here, this is where they put the name of the child. This name here is certified of your mother and father. They're the ones that provided the information on here. They put the name on here and then they sign down here, one of them, to certify the information is true and correct to the best of their knowledge. The point being is that this name is certified to be of your mother and father, not the government, of the mother and father, hence lawful name. And this is your ownership. This document here represents your ownership of property. As I said previously, the government did sequester this document, so they're blocking you from buying and selling and owning property in your own name, your lawful name of your mom and dad. Next screen share. It's an Ontario, Canada birth certificate. Okay, this birth certificate evidences the birth of the son of the country. It has a legal name, John Smith or Smith John Paul. This name here is of the state, of the province, of the country. So you got one that's of your mom and dad and one that's of the country. Remember we talked about two being same name. They're not really the same name, but they look and sound the same. This is the distinction. So in the one document there, they hold your ownership of property. In this one here, this is where you're using this property here. This is not your property. It's not your legal name on here, which is an extract of the registration of birth. It looks and sounds the same and all that sort of stuff. But this one's of the state. So one's of mom and dad, one's of the state / country or province / country. This is what the name you're all using out there in the public, and this is the name you're doing business in. This name belongs to the owner. You're not the owner. So I just wanted to get these documents out here so you know we're somewhat on the same page, so we know what we're talking about here. So your ownership is sequestered on one hand, and you're out there buying and selling in the name of the Queen on the other hand, the owner. Let's get into this video now, into the totality of this.
Hello. I'm back. How y'all doing out there in Wonderland? Wonder what's going on out there. Anyhow, this is a continuation on reclaiming dominion over your ownership of property. We began our sessions early April in 2023 here on that concept. And it's a very simple concept, as I've shared before. People are using this approach, no resistance. You may recall in the Reclaiming Your Securities, especially those people that got the Reclaiming Your Securities package, our original package, starting back in 2020. One of the biggest issues people will have is the government and the other side of the fence there. They're perceiving we're a threat to the revenue stream. And so that's where a lot of resistance is going to be met, again, because they consider it a threat to the revenue stream. So this reclaiming dominion over your ownership of property actually is no threat to that whatsoever. See, and here's the thing. They're holding your ownership of property. True story. But you're holding their ownership of property. True story. And that's where it sits, that you're holding their ownership of property. And the truth of the matter is, they're saying this is my house, and you go to court to defend and, to save your house from being foreclosed on, for example, but it's not your house. You don't own any property. Let me make this clear. In Canada, you don't own any property in Canada. You don't own any property in the USA. You don't own any property in Australia. You don't own any property in New Zealand. You don't own any property in the United Kingdom. These are God's kingdom is a different story. But in these fictional country things, you don't own any property in there. And the reason you don't own any property in there is they took your ownership of property through the registration of birth process. I'll get into that here a little bit. Okay, then you end up with their birth certificate, their entity, and doing business in that entity, and you don't own the property in that name either because it's not your certificate, it's not your property. So on one hand, they hold your ownership of property, like I say, through registration of birth, they sequestered. We've talked about that. Your ownership of property, your estate, which is the foundation security we've been talking about. But you're also holding their ownership of property because you're using their birth certificate to do business for your own private profit and gain, and there's the problem. Remember, a lawyer said to my friend, we know you don't own the house. What he didn't say is because we're holding ownership of property. But who gets the money? But who gets the money? There it is, but who gets the money? So with the birth certificate now, it's you're holding their ownership of property. And sure enough, my house, my car, my TV, my furniture, my money, my income, you see. So we want it all, the substance and the form. So this reclaiming dominion over your ownership of property simplifies this whole thing. It says, okay, you guys want to own it? We'll let you own it, all right. Remember, owner pays. Owner pays. If you don't own the car you're driving, and you don't, you have no obligation to provide insurance. If you don't own the home that you're currently paying a mortgage on, you're not actually liable for the debt. So here's the thing. You don't own any property in whatever country you think you're in. You do not own property there, nor do you own debt, and your estate that they sequestered is the security. We're talking a little bit of trust stuff here. Just going to pause this for a moment. Thank you. So you can see in this sense that where it sits, like I say, where it sits right now, you are assumed and presumed to be the owner of the car, the house, the furniture, the money, the bank accounts, all of that stuff, all the accounts in the name Smith John off of the birth certificate, but it's not true. So that's the monkey that has to be dealt with. You get that off your back. But I got to say this again. People need to think here. And we know you don't own the home because your ownership is sequestered over here, the substance. But who gets the money? But who gets the money? Okay, so in order for the holder of your ownership or property to perform here, that party has to get the money. But now you're getting the money. So what we have here is an imbalance. There's no balance because it started off with balance. It started off when they had the registration of birth. Let me put it this way. If you never got the birth certificate, then the holder of of your ownership or property would have to perform for you. Excuse me, which is what we want to get back to. But when we started using their birth certificate, their property for our own private profit and gain, that's when all the burden shifted to us because you don't actually own it. So the best you can do here is be trustee. So like I say, anyhow, if you didn't get the birth certificate, you would still own your property. It would still be sequestered. It would still be in trust, and whoever holds that would have to perform for you because they've got it, right? They've got your name. You can't do it. So, but fact of the matter is, everyone I know, including myself, got the birth certificate. So tournament, you call it whatever you like here, that's when things change. So we have to get that money. The money has to get to the owner. Again, when I say owner, and for Canadians, you should believe you're Canadians, you're fictional beings, the Queen is the owner. But let me put it this way, the Queen owns everything in Canada. Remember, Canada's not got nothing to do with Kingdom of God, nor does any other country. So it's one owner, it's one monopoly, the Queen owns the property. And so the Queen has to get the money. So here's another thing, because it is a monopoly, the Queen is the one owner. The Queen also owns all of the debt. And as I've said in previous videos, I believe, the purpose of money is, as per Mr. Jacques from the Standing Committee in Banking and Commerce 1938, I think it was here in Canada, it's the interviewing Graham Towers, the first bank, governor of the Bank of Canada, talking about all this. Mr. Jacques explained the purpose of money is to be created, issued, spent, and returned to source for cancellation. Well, it's free right now. When you go out there buying a car, it's not you buying the car, it's the Queen buying the car, buying through you because you're buying it in her name, right? Smith John, that's off her birth certificate. Purchasing a home, it's the Queen purchasing the home because you're doing it in the name of and for the Queen. So it's not actually you doing any buying and selling here, it's the Queen doing the buying and selling. But in order for the Queen to be alleviated of the debts, just to get the money, has to return to source, right? Like I say, you got to read a little bit between the lines here. We started sessions on this, Zoom recording sessions on this early April, and we've had 3 or 4 of them now. We have another one coming up next Wednesday, the 31st, I think it is, of May, 2023. So that's what we've talked about previously, about surrender and assignment, so on and so forth, surrendering the profits, so on and so forth. Because see, as of now, so you're basically holding property as usufructuary, meaning you get to profit from the use of someone else's property. And that's what you're doing. You're using the King's property, the birth certificate, the name Smith John. Well, we don't want that. We want them to have the usufructuary, which is what they had in the beginning when they got the registration of live birth. Had you not got the birth certificate, then they're holding your ownership, right? So they could profit from your property instead of us as it is now profiting off of their property. So we got to get the profits back to them, to the owner of your property, the holder of the ownership of your property, so that now that party, i.e. the trustee, can do her job. Understand? So now there's a bit of a strategy. There's quite a bit of a strategy going on with this. It's the opposite, really, of how most people are going to think, and that is, this is not about me. It's not me being injured. Yeah, you can say I've been injured. They screwed me, blah, 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 and that may be very well true, but the perspective here is not that, because you want to get them to stop doing that kind of stuff, right? Well, what if it's the king that's being injured? And then, which is a byproduct, also implicates you. So in a roundabout way, yes, you're both being injured. The king is being injured and you are being injured, but the focal point here is the king, because they all work for the king. They don't work for you, they work for the king. So you want to put the focus on the king, that the king is being injured by current operation of laws causing injury. So there's a trespass going on against the king and his interests, because they think you're the son of Canada. They think you're the owner. They think you're the usufructuary, maybe. I don't know exactly what they think. Maybe they think you're the trustee, but they think along the way you're any one of all of those things, which is not good for us. Not at all. So that's why I say the money has to get back to them, so that now who gets the money? Okay, we know you don't own the house, and we know the queen gets the money. Owner pays, right? Owner pays. I've shared in the past, for sure in our Zoom recordings, and this is a document from 1912, started with the President of the United States there, and one page, page 8, talks perfectly about the express trust under the common law, and this is the short version of it. Anyone having dealings with the trustee, and the trustee I'm talking about here now in this case would be the holder of your ownership of property. So once you've got the money back to that, so you're not going to profit and gain from somebody else's property, you're going to get that back to the king or the queen, get that documented. So now if somebody comes after you, as if it's your money, as if you're the owner, then they're actually injuring the king, because that's his interest, right? He should be getting the money, right? That's you want to be adamant about that. No, this is the king's money. Absolutely. If you guys kept attacking me to get that money, then you're trespassing against the king. You're making claims against the king, injuring the king. And it seems like you guys think I'm the owner, or that I'm the, like I say, the son of Canada, or the proprietor, or a trustee, or the usufructuary, which were none of those things. But that's when they're attacking you and I. But the reason they're attacking you and I in the first place is because we claimed ownership of property that wasn't actually ours, right? Neither here nor there, just other than the realization, oops, shouldn't have done that. So we get the so anyone having dealings with the trustee, okay, in this case the holder of your ownership of property, once you get back to that point, is to look to the estate, your ownership of property that trustee is holding, for the security. That's what we say, that's registration of live birth is your foundation security. And it is. And they have it. So they hold a security that underwrites the whole thing, but again, got to get that money to them. So there's a real simple cut dry way really to get that money to them. If you're a very short, simple communication, this is a completely, basically non-commercial process. I think I've stated before, this reclaiming dominion over your ownership of property. Reclaiming securities is a little bit different, like I say. And yes, they will perceive that, can perceive that as and likely perceive that as a threat to the revenue stream, whereas this other reclaiming dominion over your ownership of property, the focal point is here, you guys took my ownership of property, I've been using your property for my private profit and gain, oops, nope, this is the king's money, fix it, so that the king gets the money. And there's a way to do that, like I say, in a strategy way where there's really no resistance. That's what they're going to do, come back and say, you own it? Okay, so it's okay, so if I own it, then fuck off. They're not going to go there, but if they want to be out of it, it's like I say, wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. There's no fight here, there's no struggle here. Just lay out the truth. The truth is, remember, it's the truth that sets people free. You don't own any property in the country you think you're in, nor do you own any debt, and the estate that they sequestered is the security. But like I say, the problem is you're using their property, their birth certificate and their birth certificate legal name, which is a birth certificate, by the way, is a breeder document. It breeds other things like driver's license, social insurance, SSN, passports, photo cards, health cards, national identity cards, all that sort of stuff. So once you've used that birth certificate, Smith John name, and plugged into other stuff there, you basically now you're using someone else's property for your own private profit and gain, but it's not your property to do that with. That's why you're a usufruct and owe the service to the king. Pay our taxes and obey the law. We want to get all that monkey off our back. What some people call correction of status. It's really correction of identity. Right now, remember, identity is not what you are, it's what you're of. And if you're of Canada, then you're doomed. If you're of the United States, you're doomed. Of UK, of New Zealand, of Australia, you're doomed. You're not actually of those things, but as long as they assume or presume it, which these are rebuttable assumptions and presumptions, no doubt about it. And the thing is here is that, so this is why I say, and from the perspective that selfishness is the root of all evil, this is where some people are going to have a struggle. They're not going to be willing to let go. They're not going to see the bigger picture. Okay, they hold my ownership of property over there. If I get the money to them, now they got it all. Now they have to perform because there's an uneven exchange. But other people say, nope, they've screwed me. I want to get it all back. I think that's what's going to keep some of those people in bondage for a very long time. It's going to be a real hit and miss thing. And like I say, what I'm sharing here has been proven. I can't give you all the details, but what I can say is they work for you now. They serve you now. If you're going to do this, then they will serve you. It's been proven. I'm just going to pause this again. Thanks. Okay, so the key thing here is that it's the king. It's the owner. And I'm just qualifying this here. I'm just using the term owner. Whoever the owner is where you're at. Here in Canada, it's the king. It's the owner / the king that's being injured. This is the focal point. Because of the activities of others, privateers, representatives of His Majesty, and others making claims against and trespassing against His Majesty's property as if it's your property, but it's not your property. Like I say, that's the truth that sets us free. And the truth is you don't own any property in the country you're at. And this is why we say going into these courts, you're fighting as if you are the owner is really dumb. Instead of going into the court, for example, we've said this, good morning, your owner. There's a reason for that. So anyhow, we've got a good strategy set up here to, and others that we're not associated with that are catching on to this whole I don't want to call it reclaiming dominion over your ownership of property. That's what we call it, but they're dealing with the truth, realizing, okay, I don't own any property, and I'm using someone else's property for my own private profit and gain when I should be letting the owner of that property receive the profit and gain. And the saving grace, like I say here, is that they're holding your ownership of property in the background, which is actually underwriting the whole thing. So in the public side of the things, the Queen is the guarantor / debtor. But behind that is our estates. Remember, these fictional things bring absolutely nothing to the table. Government brings nothing to the table. It's from the people. It's of God, ultimately God and man. And that's the saving grace at the end of the day. So you want to get them to work for you, you got to give up that money. Or you go the other path and reclaim all of that stuff and, quite frankly, to get the money and then be on your own sort of thing and do what you want with it. But, this is a real non-adversarial, simple, this is completely non-commercial. It's a very simple process. Just like I say, it's the truth that sets us free. The truth is you do not own property in Canada, United States, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, any of these countries. You don't own any property because they took it. And the business and the property you think you own right now in the name of the government's birth certificate, you don't own that either. So you can see the dumbest thing we could be doing is claiming ownership we don't actually own. And I remind thee, from the Law Commission of Canada in about 2000, we came across this document. They get jurisdiction over us by appealing to the slothful greed of the individual. And you never see people being greedy about stuff. It's always being greedy about the money. So appealing to the slothful greed of the money. Here's the money. Here's the money. Get the money. Take the money. And that's what's keeping everyone in bondage. You want a way out? And you want to become party to our Reclaiming Securities, reclaim dominion over your ownership of property Zoom sessions to get access to that information. I provided information to people on the one owner. It's very small. It's a very simple package. There's not a whole lot of information there. We're keeping it very simple because it is very simple. Minimal paperwork. Most of it's in the head here now. It's just an understanding and the realizations of certain things and accepting these truths. So, yeah. Anyhow, so I think that's it. Let me just put on pause here, get a top of my coffee. And, beautiful morning out here. Be going out. By the way, the Queen bought me an e-bike. A very nice e-bike. So, I'll be out for a ride today. But, yeah, let me pause this and I'll get back to you shortly. Thank you. All right, yeah, that's it. So, like I say, as it sits now, we're using their property, their birth certificate, their breeder document, and all their, the Smith, John, Paul legal name out there and all that sort of stuff. And we're claiming ownership of the house and ownership of the money. So you can see how the scales have tipped like that in our favor. We got it all. We want it all. We want the house and the money, right? In the beginning, it started like this before we got the birth certificate. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing here is, again, we're taking this, we're claiming ownership of stuff that actually doesn't belong to us. So we're going to give that over to them now. So the scales are going to tip this way. Now they owe us. You see, now they have it all. In order to bring balance, they have to even the exchange. They have to pay the bills. In the whole process here, you're taking yourself completely out of the equation as if you're a subject or a property or anything belonging to the country, a son of the country, a fiction, a person. All of that stuff goes out the window. It only applies to the greedy and selfish. And I'm not pointing fingers here saying greedy and selfish. It's just like a construction of law, whatever you want to call it, a series of events. But claiming ownership of property that you don't actually own is really dumb when you think about it. So let the owner have it. Owner pays. Owner pays. Love you. God bless. Just let me pause. Just make sure I am done. Thank you. And as far as these registration of birth documents being admissible in any court, I'm speaking from Ontario legislation because I've read it. It's the first thing I did when I got on this path. I said, okay, we're talking about birth certificates here. I need to read that legislation where it all began. I think you should all do the same. I highly recommend it. Anyhow, admissible in any court in Ontario as proof of the facts so certified. The facts so certified. This is my lawful name, which is not a legal name. It's my lawful name of my mom and dad, which is distinguished from the legal name of Canada, of Ontario, of the king, of the owner of Canada, or whatever country you're in. But if you can't find it, something like that in your vital statistics legislation or whatever they call it where you're at, where the birth was registered, the event, look into the Evidence Act. Canada there's a Canada Evidence Act. Ontario has an Interpretation Act, which was formerly the Evidence Act. So it talks about admissibility, these kind of things. All of these things are admissible in court. It's proof the facts are certified. It's a public record. Pardon me, it's a government record. It's a record. It's admissible. It's acknowledgeable in their courts. So you can very easily establish, not that I'm saying you go to court or anything like that, but if you had to, regardless, they know the truth. It's right there. Who certified it? Mom and dad did. So that name's up. My lawful name is of my mom and dad. The legal name is of the government. The owner of Canada. If you're in Canada. We're at Canada. Can't be in Canada. There is no Canada. Pick up the phone and ask to talk to Canada. You'll never get there. Somebody will say, can I help you? But that's not Canada. That's maybe Steve or John or Mary. Anyhow, it's pretty cool. And people taking this path, zero resistance, maybe a test question or two to see if you know what you're talking about. And I remind people, paperwork is part of it, but the biggest part of it is your knowledge and your understanding and knowing the truth. It's the truth that sets us free. We can help you with that. Love you. God bless. Light of God never fails. Not possible. Regardless of what's going on out there, just keep that in mind. Light of God never fails. Light of God never fails. Rather than picturing death and destruction, how about this? See everyone living happy, prosperous, joyous lives, living in happy, prosperous, joyous homes, well fed, well clothed. Visualize that and wake up happy. Love you. God bless. Till next time. I bid you adieu. Oops. Happens. Kind of what we're talking about here is to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. You look at the picture on the money. Remember, it's not our money. It's not our property. Look on the money. In Canada here, it's got the picture of the Queen on there. So whose money is it? Whose property is it? Whose debt is it? Same for all the other countries. It's not your picture on there. It's not your money. So what we're kind of talking about here, again, when we took their birth certificate and used it for our private profit and gain, was using their money, their debt, their obligation, which is holding the Queen in bondage because they can't get back to source for cancellation, right? Zero out the account. So when we're saying, oh no, this is the king's profit, like I say, it shifts it all back over there. So now they have our ownership of property and they got the money. So now who has the house and who gets the money, right? So in order now they're in a position where they've got it all and it's an uneven exchange. So now they've got to level the playing field, which is basically to pay the bills, so that you get the substance. It's people want the substance. Ultimately, it's about the substance, right? You don't live in a home. You don't live in money. You live in a home. You have a home or a home. And so their interest to Caesar's interest, or the owner's, Canada's interest to the Queen's interest, is the money. Ours is the substance. So they're holding our substance, our ownership of the substance. We're holding their ownership of property, which is not, for all intents and purposes, is the money, the form. So we give them the form, render to Caesar the form. It's got his picture on there. Yeah, this is yours, but you're holding my ownership of property. Now you got the money and you got my property, ownership of property. Scales like this now, out of whack. It's an uneven exchange. In order to level the playing field, they've got to pay the bills. So it kind of goes like this, but never coming to you anymore. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's kind of a render under Caesar the things that are Caesar's, so that the things that are God's could be rendered unto you, his children.
Yeah, it's me again. Just one last thing here. There's a rule of thumb here, and that is you can only issue money if you own property. As I say, the Queen owns all the property in Canada, so the only one that can issue money in Canada, speaking for Canada, is the Queen, because she owns all the property. And it's not you, remember, it's not you doing the buying and selling. It's not you purchasing the car. It's not you purchasing the home. Yeah, you're there, but it's the Queen purchasing the car. It's the Queen purchasing the home because she's the owner of the property. She's got to provide the money, right? Wherever it gets to you, into your hands, or whoever's hands it gets to. But the point is that only the owner can issue money. You don't own any property, so you can't issue money. But the point is whoever issues the money is also on the hook for the debt. That's why it's paramount that that money gets back to source for cancellation, back to the Queen for cancellation. Or us taking claim and ownership of this stuff is a big problem. It's imperative that money gets back to the Queen for those reasons. Again, main point here I want to stress though is that only the owner can issue money. And money, yes, money is debt. So unless that money gets back to source for cancellation, the Queen is in bondage, but we're the ones holding her there. So she's around saying, oh, you're going to hold me in bondage, I'll hold you in bondage, kind of thing. Tit for tat.